It can only be attributable to human error.
You're entering paranormal.
He meddled in things that you people weren't. He meddled in things. He meddled in things.
Where will we go next? Just phantom from another time.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hello, I'm Alex Kaiju,
I'm Jasmine Maywith.
And I'm Eli Watson.
and today you are listening to
Cryptid,
Campfire.
Baby.
we're back. Surprise, surprise. Drop that episode on you with no warning, folks.
Correct.
Just
Yeah.
in time for summer.
Yeah, just in time for the time of our lives.
Speaking of our lives, what's been going on in them, guys? What have we been up to?
Oh, nothing. Once Cryptid Campfire ended, I started living on the street. I've been eating garbage every single day.
So what else has changed?
What? Wow.
JK.
But we are back, guys. We've taken like a year off, I think is what we found. We had got really burnt out at the end of our run with the Paranormal Network, and we decided to step away and take some time for ourselves, kind of pursue our own avenues of creativity and income. Eli's been traveling with Small Town Monsters. Alex, you moved, right? You're not even near me anymore. We used to hang out, and now we can't because you're 2 hours away.
Yeah, I was going to preface it by saying when we took a break from Cryptid Campfire, I decided to take a break from it all, the big city even, and I moved.
Yeah, you wanted to take a break from us.
Not even.
Well, break from you, Jasmine, because I was already out of the picture.
Wow. I take
Yeah.
offense to that.
And we're taking a more offense this tome because it's tome extreme.
It is.
true.
We are titling this tome Extreme because that's the Roman numeral we've reached now at this point. What Roman numeral is X? Is it 10? Is it 10?
Yes.
Are we in our 10th season of Cryptid Campfire?
Correct.
Mhm.
Holy
We're going parallel with another long-running franchise, Fast and Furious 10.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is the, how do they say? The beginning of the end of the last ride.
Family.
Also, hey, before we skip over me, I'm doing a little bit more than traveling with Small Town Monsters. I have my own series with them.
Yes.
Yes, Mysteries and Monsters is what it's called. So that's the Eli Watson solo show where I have no one to keep me in check. It's unfiltered.
It is. There's even some interesting ad reads in some of your episodes.
Oh yeah, baby.
No, it is exciting. I was telling Eli the last time we saw each other that sometimes when I watch his Mysteries and Monsters episodes, I don't even scroll down to read the comments because I get jealous of how successful he is.
Really?
This dude, thousands of views, hundreds of comments, man. Eli's really out here. Eli really is out here in the field now, doing primary research, going to locations, Sasquatching, howling off the side of mountains. He's literally in the field now. We used to joke about it all the time. Talking about how, we're going to go on a road trip. Oh, we're going to go camping. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to go find Bigfoot. Eli really did it, guys. I mean, he didn't
He
find
found
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
He didn't find Bigfoot yet. He didn't do it, but he's out there. And I genuinely think it's so cool because, correct me if I'm wrong, that connection was made because of our podcast. We started Cryptid Campfire, which got us connected with Small Town Monsters, and eventually Eli got that job, and now look at him. He's
Well,
really doing it.
Since Jasmine wants to be the spoiler of the narrative I've been trying to share, that is correct. What I've been
Am I
saying,
mic hogging already?
no,
You're breaking kayfabe though.
the narrative I keep trying to spin is that I backed a Small Town Monsters Kickstarter, and as Seth was scrolling through the names, he saw mine and was like, "Oh, what's this guy about?" And then he reached out to me to be on Cryptid Campfire. But the truth is, I reached out to him, and he said yes, and then that's how that started. So,
And the rest is history.
but the
Yeah.
other one's a lot of fun, you know. Especially because I change the dollar amount every time. Sometimes I say 1,000, sometimes I say $5.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that when we first started the podcast, we were all talking about like, oh, what would it be like in the field? What would it be like to go out in the wilderness? And now Eli's living the dream. And he even has his own official poop bucket too.
Oh yeah, oof. Yeah, poop buckets. Yeah, it's kind of wild being in the field, to be honest, because it's just this was not a serious thing for me in terms of like looking into Bigfoot and whatnot. And then it became more serious, and now it's my whole life. And at this point, I can't escape.
Mhm.
If even if I tried, I would have to like fake my death and go to Cuba in order to escape the Bigfoot community.
How serendipitous that we're bringing the podcast back. It's funny because even though we all live in different areas now, as we mentioned earlier, we still would like hang out. Like we had regular Zoom calls to catch up. It's not like we stopped doing the podcast and then we stopped talking to each other. Every time we got together, we would joke about bringing the podcast back. And in the beginning, it was just a joke because we were so burnt out and didn't want to do it. But then with each time we said it, it became more and more realistic of like bringing the podcast back. Alex was really gunning for it. Alex really wanted it to happen. He was really hoping that we would come back. And
that was just a month after we stopped too.
It was. It was.
I was like, oh, I think we've had enough break. We've been away from it for a while. Come
Like,
on.
no way, dude. I was donezo.
yeah, me and Eli needed more time. But just so happened, one of those meetings, it kind of clicked with all of us. And we were like, but what if we did? What if we did? And then Eli sent the message. That the message, the thing that really set it into motion was Eli having an idea. He sent the message and was like, if we want to bring the podcast back, I have a topic. And that kind of just was like, all right, I guess we're doing this. I guess it's happening again.
Oh yeah. Which does that lead us into the topic of today? Which
I would say that that's a good segue.
the audience would know, you know, because the title of the podcast gives it away. But today we're talking about cryptids and campfires.
How to set up your own campfire
How to set
with
up.
these 5 simple tools.
Now, we're talking about the Beast of Gevaudan, which I'm honestly surprised over the course of like 216 episodes we did not cover.
Yeah. And disclaimer now, there's a lot of French names that, listen, I practiced, but I'm still probably going to mess up some of them. But
Yeah, just to give you a heads up, there's going to be a lot of mutilation of French words and of French people throughout this
Yeah.
episode.
Correct. I think maybe there should be a trigger warning here because some of these deaths are pretty violent.
yeah.
In fact, I think this is the episode we're going to be talking about the most murders besides our true crime episode.
And that's when the cannibalism started.
But wait, there was a true crime episode? I must not have been on
The
that.
Bunny Man.
Oh.
Remember? Because we all thought it was a cryptid.
Oh.
With a name like that, what did you expect?
Yeah, listen, we've learned from some of our past mistakes, guys. We are, or at least I am, I guess I can only speak for myself, taking a new approach to the podcast this time around. If you listen to some of our previous episodes, you will think that maybe Jasmine is a bit of a mic hog. And I don't want to do that
Not
again.
even. You listen, you want to be informative, you want to let the audience know that you care and that you have their best interest in mind. And thank you and appreciate that.
Well, thank you. But seriously, though, we brought the podcast back. I'm going backwards a little bit. I segued into the subject and then I'm going backwards.
Give you a
But
tease.
I just wanted to say that we do feel like it's the right time to bring the podcast back. And that was kind of validated because as soon as we decided to bring the podcast back. Like, Eli sent the message. We said, let's do the Beast of Gevaudan. We said, okay, we're doing it. We started to get messages from people asking if the podcast was coming back. It's like they knew somehow. And so we're bringing it back. We're here. We are doing it for ourselves. We don't have anybody to answer to. There are no time limits. Which
Not
is part
even
of...
God himself. Hubris. My name is Cryptid Campfire. We're gods.
No.
We're alive. We can do whatever we want. We can't even say shit. Tome extreme.
Yeah, it is extreme. It is extreme.
And no time limits either. So that means we can keep extending this preamble out for about maybe 30 to 45 minutes and then
hit an ad break.
Yeah, you know,
we don't have ads.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Self-funded, baby.
Yeah, self-funded. We're coming to you live, and we're talking about the Beast of Gevaudan today.
Gevaudan. Wow. That's a fun one.
But thank you guys for joining us. Bear
God,
with
it's
us
good to be back.
while we get our footing. And yeah, let's get into it. The Beast of Gevaudan.
All right. So, location. Where is Gevaudan? Because I don't know.
All right, I'll tell you. So
where it is. Please tell me where it is.
Breaking it down. Gevaudan is a mountainous area of south central France. It's modern day Lozère. So like Gevaudan doesn't actually exist anymore, but the area that it was in is now known as Lozère. And everything that we're going to be talking about today happened in this area in the mid 1760s. Some information about the like landscape of this area. The area had a reputation for being a remote, isolated backwater where the forces of nature had not been full tamed, where the forests were indeed enchanted. That's a quote from J.M. Smith. He's a historian, and he wrote the book Monsters of the Gevaudan, The Making of a Beast, which Eli is holding up right now. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Yeah. I bought a book. I have one book in my collection now, guys.
Hey, listen, every great journey starts with one step.
Yeah, I took inspiration from Eli always being the book guy and decided that on my once a year trip to Barnes and Noble that I was going to get cryptozoology.
Once a year?
No, I go to Barnes and Noble more often than
that. Holy moly.
But I went ahead and purchased Cryptozoology A to Z by our idolized friend Lauren Coleman.
Whoa. The man, the myth, the legend himself.
Yeah.
But more information on the location of Gevaudan is that it is sometimes referred to as the Scotland of France. It is characterized by extremely unstable weather conditions. They can change very quickly. Lots of swamps, lots of moors, lots of highlands, mountains. I don't know if you said how tall they are, but they're 4,000 feet roughly, topped with granite, outcroppings. It looks like where a werewolf might be.
Oh. Yeah. Some parts of the Gevaudan were also formed by the lava flows of ancient, now extinct volcanoes. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's
sick. Random side note, but we're already early into the episode, and it's just funny that every time we talk about cryptids or look into myth and legend, someone always uses to describe something as something else. So it's funny to me that, in France, it's like the Scotland of France.
Yeah.
What the hell?
What does Scotland look like?
Yeah. Like, when they discovered the Yeti, they're like, it's like what do they call it? When the Yeti was first, and then when they discovered Bigfoot, it's like, it's America's Yeti here in their own backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually cool though, the lava flows, because I know in Oregon and Washington they have caves that were formed by lava underground, and I know that the Gevaudan also has lots of caves, and I wonder if they are from the lava flow as well.
Probably. But yeah, piggybacking off of everything that you just said about it being a very harsh environment, there are small villages that like dot the valley floors, and there's fields and things like that. But the Gevaudan was kind of the place that a predatory monster might hope to escape capture. I have a quote here. I put it a little bit further down in my notes, so give me a second, but it's related to what we're talking to about right now. It was an extremely difficult area to hunt on. So when the beast started like attacking people, which we'll get into, but people were obviously going after it. But there was a hunter, his name was Dinvel Duvamel, which is different than Duhamel, who we'll talk about later. But he noted after a first survey of the area that this beast will not be an easy catch. Horses could not be used in the swamps, and the creature could easily escape in the forests and hide between the rocks. The Contal Massif, with some peaks over 5,000 feet high, so that is what you were saying earlier, Eli, also act as a barrier for clouds. So the weather in the Gevaudan is notoriously bad, with cold and long winters, wet summers. In various times, the animal would escape into the mist, or hunters would give up in the pursuit due to heavy rain.
Correct. That was not the only thing difficult, though. Hunting was difficult, but so was apparently agriculture.
Mm.
Apparently, for whatever reason, as we'll see, most of the people here were farmers, but things just like didn't want to grow in the Gevaudan.
Well, from the description, it's what? Nothing but lava fields, swamp, rocky terrain, maybe even a moor. Because as far as I can tell, you can't grow anything in a moor.
Yeah. So maybe that's why it's predicated by livestock, now that I'm thinking about it. Lots of cows.
A lot of methane.
Hey, contributing to global warming. Just kidding.
Hey, did you know that cows sometimes explode?
What?
Because they're filled with so much methane that you have to like sometimes decompress them. There is a video online. This is so out of topic, but hey, it's Team Extreme, baby. Home Extreme. I saw a video of someone took looked like a big needle, and they stuck it in the side of a cow, and fire started shooting out.
Holy
You're
smokes.
lying.
No.
This is a myth. This has to be debunked somewhere. You're not telling me a cow shoots flames out of a pinhole in its side.
It was a specific kind of needle, but they stuck it in. It started shooting out fire, and they said that you have to sometimes like let the methane escape from the cows, or else they'll fill up too much and explode.
I feel like this is not a thing.
I don't know, man. It's out there. Listen, we're talking about the apex predator that is the Beast of Gevaudan, but also cows explode too, so that's another danger.
That is extreme, I suppose.
And that's just a taste of what you'll get in this tome going forward.
Yes, it was. So, speaking of the extremities, what was the first attack?
Okay, I want to know. I'm curious. What do you guys have for the first attack? Because I have different reports.
Well, before we get into like a specified list, I think it is important to note that the events that occurred are not debated. Like this isn't just like a cryptid myth or anything like that. We had the minor trigger warning at the beginning of the episode because this really did involve a lot of people who unfortunately passed away because these attacks were real. And it's not called into question by scientists. What's debated is actually what it was that committed these violent attacks. So I don't have like a first sort of attack. One of the first things that started to concern people was actually in 1762 when a young boy who was herding a flock of sheep disappeared near the village of Laval in the province of Dauphiny. Only remains of the boy, partially eaten, were recovered. That's like the earliest sign of something that I have, but there was no actual sighting with that.
Well, before we get into it, then I shall preface it with in the Monsters of the Gevaudan, The Making of a Beast by J.M. Smith, as you mentioned earlier, he puts together a very compelling argument that there was indeed a wolf infestation at the time that all these attacks were occurring. I'm not sure if I'm convinced that it was a wolf, but certainly there was more wolves than normal in the area when this was happening. So,
Dang, Eli's already jumping all the way down to the explanations of what the beast was.
well, I'm just saying, maybe that wasn't, I don't know,
Well, it is that thing. I guess we should preface. Apparently, wolf populations have been one of man's constant threats throughout of all mankind.
Mhm.
And apparently, at one point, France was just overrun with wolves,
they got hungry.
hungry like the wolf.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you. This is what I have for the first attack. June 30th, 1764. 14-year-old Jean, it's not Jean,
Mm-mm.
Jean Boulet,
Jen,
Jean,
Jen.
Jean Boulet was
Mhm.
tending to several sheep and she never came home. Not much is actually known about this particular case, but what we do know comes from a burial notice composed by the parish priest, Father Suker, and it references her death was perpetrated by the ferocious beast, leading many to assume, lots of historians, and I have two books here that both reference this as the first killing on record, but because of the wording of it as the ferocious beast, it leads many people to speculate that there were actually previous killings and even sightings of it before this happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think even before that there was a story about a girl. I don't have the name, but this apparently comes from the same book that you're referencing, Eli. It's like a secondhand source. It's the History Channel's website quoting the book that you have, saying that around April of 1764 there was a young woman tending cattle who was attacked by the creature. She described it as like a wolf yet not a wolf, but she actually escaped because her herd defended her.
Correct. I have that here as well. I did not know this, but this is apparently a fact. Cattle will actually move
Explode.
Yeah, it's out
well,
there.
before they explode, they will actually defend their caretakers. So they will move in formation to and we'll see that in some of these sightings and some of these attacks that the cows will actually form a wall between the beast and the potential victims.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's and just the way she describes it is, I don't know, so perfectly French. It was like a wolf, but not like a wolf too.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's from the same country that gave us the phrase "je ne sais quoi." You have a certain, I don't know, you know.
I mean, survivor accounts do lead to some rough and varied descriptions. We haven't really talked about what the beast actually looks like yet, but there's not a lot of agreement except that it's like a wolf, but not a wolf.
Yeah, the descriptions were kind of all over the place. Of
I don't think. Ooh,
Is
it's
this where
not
we're
as
getting into the tea already?
it's
Ooh.
not all over the place as you might think, but
Okay.
we will get there when we get there because
Yeah.
I understand. Again, this is why books are the superior media format.
You mean this Wikipedia article that's been reread and modified over and over again?
Yeah,
Or the Cryptids wiki, which they don't even have the Beast of Gevaudan on there.
Oh, snap.
they don't.
No, I couldn't find them. I could not find an article for the.
Dude, the cryptid wiki let us down already.
Alex said the podcast is coming back. I know exactly where to turn to.
Yeah, I said, Cryptid wiki, I'm coming for you. And they said, we don't have what you need. So when you get to heaven, tell God we sent you.
So, Eli, what route are you going here exactly? Because we've already detoured from our usual sort of format, which is
We've gone off the rails. We're off the track. We've
It's
gone
extreme.
It's extreme. So tell me why you think, or why the fact is that books are the superior source.
Oh, because this book by J.M. Smith delves very, very deeply into the drama of there seemed to be, this is the way I've been explaining UFOs lately, but this applies equally to this topic. there is what's actually happening. Something's attacking these villagers. And then there's the entire discourse around it, which has almost nothing to do with actually what's happening. And there is a lot, and there's a lot of, oh boy, there is no way to discuss this. So the advent of like mass published newspapers and gazettes was a thing. I think 1761 was like when these like mass produced newspapers were becoming a thing. And then not only that, you started having newspapers being read out loud in public. So even the people who could not read could understand and be informed about the news. And with that came the rise of sensational news stories. You know,
You have the terminology for that? The
I
French?
don't. I couldn't
word?
find it. What is it?
Well, I'll let you finish your thought, and then I'll come in with what I have here because I don't
Okay.
want to. It might go a different direction than the point you're trying to get to.
Okay. Well, I know there's a name for it, and I couldn't for the life of me find it. I know that I have a very specific term for it,
Mhm.
but basically, as I'll get into later, these reports were kind of embellished and then added on, and then as they were copied and pasted in different gazettes and papers, they were further embellished to really create this monster as something that no one's ever seen before.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, so there were two kind of narratives that the press was going for surrounding these attacks. So the term that I was questioning you about, and perhaps this is the one that you were looking for, I'm not sure. But political news was censored a lot by the king, and so newspapers had to turn to other sources of information and entertainment to bolster their subscriptions. So they started to do the embellishing and whatnot, as you're explaining here. Specifically, there's a guy named Francois Mourinat, who is the creator and editor of the Courrier d'Avignon. They used a new type of reporting called faits divers, which translates to miscellaneous fact. So it was
yeah. What a great title.
So it was stories of everyday incidents in small villages, similar to today's true crime. So his reportage in particular transformed the beast from a backwater calamity into a national affair. So that's kind of like the one angle that they were taking. In addition to making this such a sensational event, they also were kind of creating popular stories out of the women and children who survived the attacks by defending themselves, which emphasized the virtue of the peasantry. So the term peasant originally referred to small-scale agriculturalists, those who till the soil as small landowners or agricultural laborers in Europe in historic times. But many other societies, both past and present, have had a peasant class. But one distinguishing characteristic of the peasant agriculture is self-sufficiency. So peasant families would consume a substantial part of what they produce, and while some of their output may be sold on the market, their total production is generally not much larger than what is needed for the maintenance of the family. So these stories kind of had these two parts to it about there's this ferocious monster, but look at how self-sufficient and strong and hardworking and willful these people in these communities are.
Yes.
Basically, I mean, I don't know. We've been dealing with the same problems for what, 400 years of news articles lying to us, and people saying, you know what you should do? Do that grind life. Don't sleep. Don't spend the money on anything. Grind, grind, grind. You know, look at these peasants. They've been nothing but grinding. Should be like them. And just like, oh, great.
That
400
actually
years of human experience. It's the same thing. Oh, I mean, we're going extreme with it, folks.
I'll censor it.
Dang, Alex really said, "Tome extreme." I'm dropping the F-bomb.
Yeah, dropping the F-bomb. I'm dropping the whole human existence is a sham.
Hey, man, we'll make it through.
Yeah, we still got plenty of other French people to talk about.
That is an interesting parallel though, Alex, because I hadn't thought of it in that term. I was like, yeah, look at the peasants go, look at them survive. Yeah, go them. But then at the same time, I'm like, actually, no, you're right. We shouldn't have to work so hard.
Yeah, what the heck? I'm out here busting my ass.
Yeah. So, well, since we're getting political with it, here we go. I know
Yep.
we've only talked about one death so far. This is not the brutal murder spree you were expecting.
Don't worry though, it'll come.
Violence has arrived.
Let's back it up. This is 1760s France, and as you can imagine, France in the 1760s is nothing like the United States in the present day. So you would be okay with not knowing how things worked, because I certainly did not know. Everyone knows that there was the king. France was a monarchy. It was the King Louis the 15th, who is actually the grandson of the previous King Louis the 14th. I believe the Sun King is what they called him.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little confused as to why he was like the grandson and not the direct son, but you're king for life. So if you live to be like 80 years old, you know. Anyways, further context of the surrounding world. The United States was not the United States. It was the British colonies at the time. Mozart was selling shows, and Napoleon and the French Revolution were not even ideas yet. There's that.
Oh man, imagine going to a Mozart concert back in the day.
Oh, dude, it would have been lit.
And he just breaks out Symphony Number 5 out of nowhere. It's like, I
Could
gotta
you
do that
imagine?
song.
He releases a diss track to France called The Beast.
Yeah, the Beast.
The Beast. Anyways, so France at this time was divided into administrative districts called generalities, and they corresponded roughly to the geography of the provinces. So the Gevaudan being one province, which was therefore controlled by an administrative district called the generality. And in charge of the generalities were people called intendants, who were appointed to these roles, and they came from the what do you call the hierarchy, the upper class. They came from the upper class. They were appointed to these roles. Apparently, these were not roles that you really wanted because it meant you were just gonna have to do a bunch of work.
Oh, ain't that the way?
And they co-led the province with the provincial governor. Now, the intendant also had people beneath him that were called subdelegates. And it is one of these subdelegates, well, actually, to go further down, the subdelegates also had people under them that were in charge of certain localities. So certain parishes had their leaders that all reported to the subdelegate, who reported to the intendant, so on and so forth. The intendant that is really responsible for getting the ball rolling on everything involved with this case was the Etienne Lafont. He's a big figure. He stays with us the whole time. So please, just don't skip through. I don't know. You can skip it if you want. You can skip everything I just said.
Not even.
You can skip this whole episode if you want. I mean,
No.
Yeah, we're not the boss of you. You can do whatever the hell you want. It's like Reverse Psychology magazine. Fine, don't buy this magazine.
Oh wait, did I call him the intendant? He's the subdelegate.
That really clarifies. Thank you.
He's the okay. Well, he's below the intendant. Another main character involved with this story is the intendant. So Lafont's boss, who was named Marie Joseph Emmanuel de Guinard Saint Priest. And I totally butchered it, but I'm going to be calling him Saint Priest from now on.
Saint Priest. Yeah, I mean it's just it's a big hierarchy to keep track of for my werewolf story.
It is, but it all plays a part in the never-ending complexities.
Mm-hmm. Man, we need more hierarchy people dealing with stories in Bigfoot.
Oh yeah. Oh, Bigfoot doesn't need any more complexities. It's all right.
Complex enough.
Are you going to get into more specifics about how France was in miserable condition in 1764?
Not yet.
Not yet?
You got to break up the history lessons.
Oof.
Because
All right.
now, because we got to give people what they came for. The extreme murders of poor French people.
Murder.
Okay.
You came for the cryptid, you'll stay for the murders.
Well, to summarize, between the years of 1764 and 1767, something killed a lot of people in and around the Gevaudan. I didn't get an exact number because everybody disagrees about the exact number, but well over 100 people were maimed or killed by some sort of beast, most of them being women or children.
Yeah. Okay. I want to say this now. The fact that it chose women and children, I think the percentage I read was that it was like about 2/3 of the victims were women or children. For some reason, that got brought up to be like a sexist issue in the book I read, and I was like, I'm not sure if an animal is thinking about that.
No.
I mean, unless maybe he was a complete bastard. We never know.
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't even one thing. I don't know. I just figured that women and children are easier targets than men.
Yeah.
When you have an apex predator, it'll tend to go after whatever it can kill easily to eat. And man's folly is thinking we're the apex when the Beast of Gevaudan's running around.
Hey, we killed it though. We killed it so hard we killed it twice.
You say.
Or did we?
He says we as if we were there.
Yeah, so anyways, I have some more details of bloody murders that occurred.
Go on.
If they ain't bloody, don't mention them, sir.
Okay, well, I mentioned the first victim, the dubious first victim, Jean Boulet, who was killed in July 1764, followed by August 8th, Marianne Hebrard was found throttled and half-eaten. 2 days later, an unnamed victim was also killed, and she was 15. August 30th, a boy was killed while out tending to cattle. And the month of September saw 4 more attacks, one of which was the very first adult victim, who is a 36-year-old woman in the parish of Arzenc, and she was caught just a few steps outside of her front door. And that's when the local authorities started to pay attention. So the other big problem with this whole scenario, I did not realize this, but so guns were an invention at this time. However, due to, the king, it was illegal for anyone who is not of the hierarchy to own firearms. So these villagers really be out there with sticks and stones trying to defend themselves against wolves and stuff, which is, I think, also a big reason why so many people probably died.
Sticks and stones, they broke his bones, but the words never cut through his skin.
In addition to the firearm laws and the not being accessible to everyone, they were not very advanced yet. They were very
like the little muskets.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You'd have to stand it up, put your gunpowder in, stuff it down, put the little bullet in there, put some other stuff in there because they always have like 3 to 4 little things of gunpowder on them. Just get that ready. Takes about 5 to 6 minutes. All right, and shoot, and then the bullet curves 200 yards.
Oh yeah. Well, I started thinking about that honestly because it's like it's funny because you never think about it, but like the shape of a ball is like not the most aerodynamic thing. It's not like bullets nowadays have a point to them. That's what you think of, and that allows it to go straight further. Whereas these, like you said, they'll literally come out of the barrel and just like a golf ball.
Yeah, just veer everywhere.
It was the perfect storm.
Which sometimes included actual storms.
Yeah, bad weather.
The wrath of God.
Oh, that was something that they would bring up is, did we mention this? That the peasants working their butts off, being good, toiling the land, the beast leaves them alone because they're like the godly people versus the beast was sent from God himself to kill the wicked.
Wait, is that one of the theories?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
That's wild. Wait, I didn't even read about that theory.
Where that comes from is actually a meeting with the Bishop of Mende, where Lafont was based. His name was Gabriel Florent de Choiseul Beaupré. And
Of course it is.
he was also the Count of Gevaudan. Double status points. And he told Lafont that this was no ordinary animal, but instead an agent of divine wrath. And he says, and I quote, drawn from the arsenal of God's anger to execute the death sentences his justice has pronounced.
Wow.
And that was right as Lafont started getting reports of all these deaths and was like, what's going on? He approached the bishop and the count all at the same time, and that's the answer he got.
That was the 11th plague that God never got to, sending down the beast of Gevaudan.
I think it is very interesting that in all of the research that I did not read about that theory at any point. Like, that whole element was just left out of any article I came across.
Wow. Certainly didn't take long for the idea of it being supernatural to kind of come into play.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I also want to say, before we get into our other main characters of this story, that unlike most of them, Lafont, who is the subdelegate of the region, was well liked by the locals. So there was two types of French. Apparently, there was the higher, fancier French, and then the lower class French. And apparently, they were so different that you couldn't understand one another. And Lafont was from the Gévaudan, but had spent a lot of his time with the aristocracy. That's the word I've been looking for, aristocracy. So he became a middleman because he was able to speak both types of French. So he was able to show sympathy and relate on a personal level with the locals, but also do what he needed to do and, play the political game that the aristocrats were playing.
Just like Game of Thrones. Whoa.
Oh, dude, what if you could do Game of Thrones with the Beast of Gevaudan.
It's right there. The setting, the place, the time, the people.
Yeah, anyways.
Nowhere to go after that?
I don't know. I've been talking. You guys have input?
I don't have any additional input on like the politics about it all. I just know I chose not to focus on that for my research. So one of the things I've tended to do in the past is burn myself out by trying to research every single possible aspect of whatever it is that we're talking about. So when I read a sentence that said France of 1764 was in miserable condition, I just kind of left it at that. I was like, all right,
I believe it.
Because what I read just mentioned that the 7 Years' War had just ended a year earlier. France had suffered numerous defeats at the hands of the British and the Prussians. The king lost the bulk of his country's overseas empire, and the economic situation was dire and the country was in disarray. I read all that and I was like, cool, context, moving on.
Okay, we're getting into it. There's no way around it. There's no way. Everyone, please bear with us. I have tried my best to keep this punctuated with the violence and gore I promised you, but now there is more politics and history to discuss. Let's take a look at it. And this plays a very large role in the motivations of a lot of our main characters with this story. This surprised me to learn. France was like the European superpower, I guess aside from Spain, but France owned most of Northern America, even more so than Britain. And so the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War, as it is sometimes called, I don't know all the ins and outs of, but it ended in 1763, like Jasmine said, a year prior to all of this starting up. And at the Treaty of Paris, as it was called, France took the L pretty hard. They were forced to give up all of their land in Canada, all of their land in the Great Lakes region, Louisiana, east of the Mississippi, and of course, Ohio.
Hey.
And they also lost Senegal, which was in West Africa, and as well as any holdings they had in India. So their entire global empire that they were working so hard to establish completely collapsed on them as well as it gave them a significant national debt. So any kind of like patriotic French people were feeling pretty down and out about it because of, there's no denying that they lost and they lost hard. And they had nothing really to rally around. Louis the 15th's popularity was on the decline because he led them into the conflict and they lost. So he wasn't really, liked by the people. Not only that, it was pretty tone deaf of him. At the Treaty of Paris, where they signed away everything, he launched a bunch of fireworks to try to make it seem happy, and people weren't a fan of that.
Gave out cotton candy, balloons, little sparklers. Hey, everyone, we're having a great time, right? Hold on now.
Yeah. And then not only that, the next decade, the 1770s, would see the American Revolution, which the French helped out in. And then the decade after that, the 1780s, was the French Revolution, which was inspired by the American Revolution. So all of that's kind of like building up. The idea of we're not satisfied with the monarchy, no one likes this type of system. That's all starting to bubble up at this time too. So that leads us to two of our main characters, Captain Duhamel and Count Morangier. I don't know how to say that name.
Manginelli.
Did you come across it, Jasmine? Do you know how to pronounce it?
Say it again.
Morangier.
That doesn't sound familiar.
Morangies.
Oh, wait. You say it that
Morangies.
way. How do you spell it?
Morangies.
No, I don't have that in my notes anywhere.
Okay, well, I'm going to find it and I'm going to figure it out. But anyways, you guys can take it away for now.
Well, I'll just read this quote because it kind of fits into everything that we're talking about. It's just a quote that I want to share because it comes from a local newspaper that was written at the end of 1764, which just kind of encapsulates what the people were experiencing amongst these attacks. So it says, a ferocious beast of unknown type, coming from who knows where, attacks the human species, killing individuals, drinking their blood, feasting on their flesh, and multiplying its carnage from day to day. Hunters who are in pursuit have neither been able to stop it because it is more agile than they, nor lure it into their traps because it surpasses them in cunning, nor engage in combat when it presents itself to them because its terrifying appearance weakens their courage, disturbs their vision, sets their hands shaking, and neutralizes their skill. We also made a passing comment earlier about the belief that it could potentially be supernatural.
Mhm.
And that kind of ties in with the idea that it may be a lugeru, or as we've said in the past, loop-garoo.
Oh, yeah.
Quick sidebar. We recently re-listened to our Rougarou episode, and we'd just like to apologize for anybody who has also listened to that.
Yeah.
It's a rough one, guys.
Oh, sorrows, prayers, prayers.
Thoughts and prayers. But that just goes to show that we're growing. We're always learning. We're always, self-criticizing in constructive ways. But we listened to that episode and just realized how unenthusiastic all of us were. You could tell that we didn't want to be there and we didn't really know what we were talking about and we just wanted to get it over with. But yeah, there's this idea that it was potentially supernatural, beast sent from God, werewolf, whatever.
Wait, is it pronounced Loup-garou? Is that the real way?
The French way to say it is loup-garou.
Loup-garou?
Yeah.
And we're calling it what? Loup-garou? Is that
because there's a P in it. The P is silent in the French pronunciation, but we were like, loop-garou, like a Fruit Loop or something.
Well, I mean, if the P is silent, why put it in?
I know.
Yeah. Oh, hey, everyone, just let you know this letter's silent. Then why'd you write it out?
Dude, half of French is silent, dude. It's
True.
It's beyond me. It's beyond me. I don't understand the language because I feel like even more so than English, because people say, oh, learning English is so hard because you have all these rules and then you completely disregard all the rules.
Mhm.
And, I feel like with French, there just are no rules at all.
Have you seen the meme that goes around about the English language? I saw it recently where it says, was, is before it was. Was is before it was.
Oh, but it makes sense though. Yeah,
I
that's
know, but
wild.
it's so hard. It's all the same word.
It is what it is, man.
Okay. Well, with that being said, the beast was proving elusive to everyone who looked for it. However, that's when official military involvement began. October 14th, 1764, military commandant of Languedoc's Jean-Baptiste de Marine ordered all officers to provide Captain Duhamel with any assistance needed to eliminate the monster, specifically the word monster. And that marks a significant shift because the word beast, la bête, can refer to a lot of different things. So like Beast of Burden, it could be a donkey, it could be a wolf, but monster places it at a different, it places it at threat level midnight.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It's
now
dangerous.
it's a
It's
force of
scary.
nature. Yeah. Okay, Jasmine, what do you know about this captain, bro?
What captain?
Duhamel.
Duhamel?
You mean
Duhamel?
Dremel?
Well, sorry, I don't know if I misheard you or if some of the names were combined. What do you have Duhamel's name as?
I haven't said his full name yet.
Okay, what is his full name the same as the other guy's full name? Jean Baptiste?
Jean-Baptiste. Yes, I believe it is actually.
Yeah, so there's two Jean Baptistes, but they
Oh,
have different last names.
yes. There's
Okay.
Jean-Baptiste de Marine and Jean-Baptiste Duhamel. Oh,
Yes.
this is going to be a thing. There's lots of Francois, Antoine,
Yeah.
a lot of them. Oh,
True.
half of the people that we're going to talk about are named Jean,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
Well, I
so
mean, what do you expect from a country where they had what? Every king was named Louis.
Yeah, well, what I've got about Duhamel is that as the head count rose in 1764, this is when the local officials and aristocrats took action. Like you were mentioning earlier, this is when the authorities started to pay attention. And there was a regional government delegate, who I think you've mentioned already, Etienne Lafon,
Mhm.
and Captain Jean-Baptiste Duhamel. Local infantry organized the first concerted attack. So they were the ones who were like, all right, let's go get this thing.
All right, you
Uh,
apes, you want to live forever? We're hunting the beast.
You apes.
Because basically what had happened up to this point is there were no real organized let's go get this thing events. It was more, oh my gosh, what's that? It's taking my daughter. This thing attacked my son. I'll be on the lookout, whatever, whatever. But once things started getting really crazy, they were like, we have to do something about it. So they organized a hunting party essentially, and they organized the men along military models. They left poisoned bait, and they even had some soldiers dress as peasant women in hopes of attracting the beast.
Ooh,
And
yeah. Oh yeah.
and there was a reward for killing the beast that eventually equaled a year's salary for working men. So this is when it started to get real, essentially, you know.
That
Uh,
total amount, I have it somewhere. It's like shockingly low. When you realize if that's more than what these people were making in a year, you're like, these people must have been really, really poor. It's like 600 lou or something like that. It's Louvre, however you say it, like $600. Like
If that, right?
I don't know what that would translate to, but yeah. Also, the month that Duhamel got involved, I have this kind of fun statistic here. There were a dozen attacks in that month of October, which is about four a week, and 5 people were killed. So that's pretty intense.
it
It's
is.
crazy. It's crazy to think of. It's like a backwater area. It's very rural. Nothing but peasants, like we were talking about. A beast is showing up, and we got nothing but sticks and stones.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes on for a few months, and then the military guys show up, like what 30,000 of them at any time. And
Oh,
does it?
I have exact numbers.
Do you know if did they all bring like their little musket guns too?
They do.
Okay, yeah. So you go from like, all right, nothing but like little peasants and farms to like, oh, the military guys are coming. They got their guns. They're gonna kill the beast for a whole year salary. That's 600 Louvre, if you hear what I'm saying. But then also they're wearing dresses to distract the monster.
Yeah, lots going on here. In fact, due to all the killings that happened and the attacks, Lafont pushed for temporary legalization that peasants could own guns,
Interesting.
which was only in effect for a year. And typical of, a government, the monarchy was like, yeah, they can own guns and didn't provide any guns.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have them.
Mm.
But October of 1764 brings us one of the trademarks of the Beast of Gevaudan. Okay. 20-year-old Marguerite from the village of Apker was found without her head. And a week later, they found it.
No.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Followed by just a few short days later when a 10-year-old boy was found decapitated.
Okay. Now, see, I had read about the decapitations. Like that was something that was found with a lot of these victims, which is uncommon. Like, which.
Hey, that's like 200 years early for France.
Well, it's like 20 years early.
Oh, 20 years early. But yeah, they're a little ahead of the game. It's,
Yeah.
trendsetters too early.
Oh
Sorry.
no. No, it was
Sorry.
it was a good pun, but it's so dark. I was just going to say that the decapitation of it all is very uncommon for a standard wolf attack. Like
Mhm.
anybody who's going to get mauled by a run-of-the-mill wolf is usually not going to lose their head in the way that a lot of these victims of this unknown beast were.
Yeah. And what's even weirder about it is that there's a lot of sightings that would seem to indicate that this thing purposefully took the heads of its
Mhm.
victims, which is also even more unusual.
But then, I mean, yeah, but you're saying one of them was found?
It was found, but it was like chewed up and in a different spot,
Mm.
But
Where was this? Where did this take place again? Do you have a
and
location?
it is called the village of Apker,
Okay.
which is somewhere in the Gevaudan.
But you said it was in October of 1764, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
October 7th. Then October 8th, 1764. Do you know this one?
I think so.
The
This one-
Chateau de la Vente.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you take it away?
I just have the bullet point, just that there was another mauling, and shortly after it was stalking a herdsman, and so the hunters followed it into the woods and then flushed it out into the open, and they shot a volley of musket fire into the creature, and it fell down, but then it got up and ran away, which is part of the reason that there's a lot of supernatural claims about the beast, that it either is A, bulletproof just in its existence, or B, is able to rise from the dead.
It's crazy to think too that given what we know now about like early muskets, and we're just talking about, oh, like, yeah, good luck hitting the side of a barn from like, 50 feet with a musket. Like, we launched a whole volley into the monster and it got up. And it's like, well, did any of the bullets actually hit the damn thing?
Well, that's part of the rebuttal, right? As Jasmine mentioned already, the muskets that they were using were not necessarily accurate. But if we are taking the report at face value and they did hit it and it did fall over and it did get back up, that is definitely strange.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, whatever actually happened, that's what the media took and ran with, was that this thing just doesn't die.
Did you read anything about the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It's a noun. It's like a conversation, like a narrative.
Story?
I am struggling right now, guys. The why do I feel like it starts with a C? Um, oh, this is rough.
Context?
No, shoot, this is embarrassing. There's a word I'm looking for, and maybe it'll come to me later, but what I'm trying to ask is it was more than just wanting to like stop the beast from killing people. A lot of it had to do with redeeming their honor after having had so much failure in the
Oh,
war. There's a word for that I can't find right now, but there were a lot of signs of wounded masculinity among the huntsmen and having failed, and so each time they failed at capturing the creature too, it was just another hit to their like,
ego?
you know,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Well, that's a perfect segue because
Discourse.
discourse.
There
That
you
was the
go.
word. Discourse.
The discourse. Yes, there's a lot of that. Well, one of the things about the Beast of Gevaudan and why it got so popular is, in addition to everything we just discussed, was that the 7 Years' War having ended, the media didn't have a big story to kind of publish. And then there's this thing that's out decapitating, people. And so the media, it became a unifying force for France, was like everyone was in on the hunt in some aspect or another. So when Captain Duhamel, Jean-Baptiste Duhamel, was placed in charge as a hunter in chief, for him being a veteran of the 7 Years' War, it's really, you can't look at it and be like, oh, he was just chill about the whole thing, because he wasn't. It was about, already just a few months in, this thing is getting, you can't kill it. It's decapitating people. It's 20 miles apart in a single day, It can attack anywhere at any time. It's the wrath of God, This was his shot at redemption, at proving, that he could be a hero.
It's funny to think too that they got it from the bishop of, oh, it's the hand of God coming down to smite the wickedness, and they're like, yeah, well, I think we're gonna fight God himself. We're gonna send a beast back to God in heaven, because they're like, well, you got. So it's funny to think of like just the conflicting pressures people have of like, this thing's being done to us because I don't know, I think we deserve it because that's what the bishop said, but also it's just like, well, if we bag it and we tag it, boys, France will be top of the world again.
Yeah, well, oof, maybe they shouldn't have said that. But Captain Duhamel, as I'll get into even further, is partially responsible for perpetrating the legend of it to be as big. His famous quote about it is that it's a monster sired by a lion, but with the mother of an undetermined species.
He described it pretty funny. He said it was a body as long as a leopard's, so they know what leopards are in 1740 France, so that's good. And fur that's red with a black stripe down it, which is interesting because other reports mention it being maybe all black, like a big black wolf. But Duhamel describes the breast as white as a horse on the beast, which is interesting. It was stacked, in apparently. But the one thing I do want to go into about the description is because everyone describes it basically as a wolf, more or less. They say it's like a misproportioned wolf. Some people say it has more of like a greyhound like head, more narrow, a little more elongated. And that kind of comes through in some of the illustrations, where it's kind of off kilter, like a out of proportion wolf thing with a long tail, almost like a lion's. But the one description that I don't know if you guys came across this, I don't even know if it factors into any of the reportings, but this is from Wikipedia, so take it as you will. It reportedly had a white heart-shaped pattern on its underbelly.
It did.
Yeah, like
Really?
It did.
and to me, I just I don't know. It adding to the beast the theory of the wrath of God in the corporeal form sent to punish the France. It's got a little heart on it that you can see because at the end, God still loves you.
Now, see, I know where that information comes from. I know what that source is, but we haven't gotten to that part of the story yet.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's news to me. I didn't come across that at all.
I did. And I'll tell you about it later. But I think we have some other instances we need to discuss first if we're looking at this in a chronological timeline, because the white heart on the chest comes from a very definitive account, a very end of the line, no more beast. It
Oh,
is finished.
Oh,
sort of
okay.
event.
All right, I'm
So,
excited. Let's
Before
get
we
to
get
it.
to that, we can talk about some other things. When it
yeah.
comes to the sightings, so it's already obvious that there's a lot of encounters. There's a lot of sightings, there's a lot of characters. There's only a few that I took down the names of. Like there's some notable characters like Jacques Portefeuille, who was a kid who fought off the beast with his friends. Like there were friends ranging from ages 8 to 12 who had been out in a meadow with a herd of cattle, and their friends used their pikes, which is a weapon with a pointed steel or iron head on a long wooden shaft. So we had made the comment earlier about people not having guns. They're just out here with sticks trying to fight things off. But they used those sticks to drive off the creature, and the children were rewarded by the king. And Portefeuille was sent to school, and that's a good thing. His education was paid for by the crown, is what I'm trying to say. And so that there's a story with a happy ending. He escaped, got his school paid for, made it out alive with his friends. I'm not exactly sure what other characters you guys wanted to talk about. Like, is there anybody specific you wanted to bring up the story of?
Portefeuille also got an entire military career after that too.
Really? Look at
Yeah.
him go.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with his account. Not all of them got off scot-free though. One of the 8-year-olds was bit on the neck, and then when they stabbed it, the beast let go and ripped off his right cheek and ate it.
Oh my God.
Mm.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
And that kid didn't get sent to school?
No, because Portefeuille was famous. This is the quote that made him famous. The beast had approached them while they were with the cattle. It ripped off the boy's cheek. They were stabbing it. It bit one of the other boys and dragged him into a bog where they chased it. And before the other kids chased it, some of the kids wanted to leave. And he said, "No, we need to go save our friend or we must perish with him."
aw,
And
it's very dark, but very sweet.
well, I don't think he actually said that.
Why is
That was
that?
an invention by the media to make him even more heroic.
I was
That
gonna say these friggin' 8-year-olds waxing poetic in the in the moment of stress.
Yeah, but again, that gets into the embellishments, right? He was already a heroic person, and so they embellished it to make it, that he's even more heroic.
No, we must either perish with the beast or we must fight back, like French must fight back against the injustices, and they're like, oh, this kid is going to school for it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the price for the head of the beast was raised to an astronomical amount of 10,000 livres.
So it jumped up from what, like a year's salary to
a lifetime salary.
yeah.
And then this is also December of 1764 is when Duhamel began employing a tactic that made him not very popular with people, which was using the bodies of victims as bait. And the first person they chose for that was a 6-year-old woman who had been decapitated. And so he convinced their family to leave the body where it lay for 2 days in hopes that it would return to its kill, which it did not.
Interesting.
Did they bury the body after? Does it
Yeah,
say?
they did. But,
okay.
That's somebody's grandma. They just oh.
Yeah. They didn't. This is a very gory question, but I had read a quote earlier talking about how they left poisoned bait for the beast. That's not the bait they poisoned, was it?
Yes, it was.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, they baited the bodies.
But they poisoned the bodies?
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. They I don't know what method they used, but they poisoned the bodies. And left him out there, it gets horrible.
Oh, they were desperate, you know. What's a little desecration?
Mm.
Yeah. So as Duhamel's hunts, because by the end of 1764, I believe he had led 50 hunts to look for this creature, all of which failed.
Mm-hmm.
And so as he was writing to his higher ups, exchanging letters, he began to accentuate more and more the supernatural abilities of the beast,
Mm.
making it more and more of a basically justifying, oh, well, I can't kill this thing because it can
Mhm.
do all these things.
Yeah, some of the other like supernatural claims about it were that it could, this isn't actually supernatural, but it is odd. Claims that it could walk on just its hind feet, which plays into the whole werewolf Lugero narrative. It also supposedly had fire in its eyes, which could mean many things. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that its eyes were flaming, but just, you know, that comparison of it having bright red eyes potentially. And also had an amazing leaping ability. And as we mentioned before, it potentially had the ability to come back from the dead more than once. And it could not, as of yet, be killed by a knife, lance, or bullet.
Correct. In light of all these things, the monarchy wasn't really buying it. The intendant of the region put pressure on Duhamel and said, I have a hard time understanding how all of the hunts organized up until this point have turned up such poor results. Coupled that with, leaving the dead bodies out, poisoning the dead bodies, and also imprisoning people who did not submit their reports. He was becoming very, very unpopular. And by January of the next year, they were considering removing him altogether as hunter in chief. But he pulled a sneaky on everyone, and this is where one of the first major images of the Beast of Gevaudan comes from. It was, I think, December 18th, 1764. A woman was attacked by the beast, and she survived. He described it as looking like it was about the size of a year-old bull. Its neck and belly are white. The fur of its body is red, yada, yada. Kind of what we already discussed. It has 6 talons, each the length of a finger. The head is black with a wide forehead. I think we probably touched on all of this, but
I don't think we mentioned the fact that it had talons yet.
oh yeah. Well, apparently it's got 6 talons. That was a fact Duhamel stuck with forever.
Because it's the number of the beast.
Oh.
Could be.
If he's trying to drive it up more, he's like, it had 6 talons, so it could hail Satan.
Interesting.
Anyways, so he took that to the governor of the region and told him this is what it looks like from a reputable source. And then he commissioned a painter in Montpellier to paint up the description. And then he had it published. And then he passed those pamphlets around to everybody in the region. So apparently that worked a little bit. And that's when he began, because the original plan was not to have his soldiers dress up as women, but that's when that started. So, which also did not work. And apparently there were no attacks for 12 days while the soldiers were dressed up as women. And then the day that he said, all right, we're done doing this, there was an attack and like an 8-year-old boy died.
The beast is just goofing off with them at this point.
It's weird.
Very, very strange.
Okay. And if I may regale you with the account of Duhamel's largest and most epic failure yet.
Oh.
Yeah, this was probably the largest scale hunt for the beast. It was February 1765. According to some estimates, there was as many as 20,000 people who arrived.
Mm.
And they spread out over the entire province of the Gevaudan, and they were systematically scouring the woods, the hills, the caves. Only experienced hunters were given firearms, and they were placed in strategic locations should the situation arise that they actually fleshed it out. As they pushed through, the goal was to push it into the western portion of the region, and it actually worked. They flushed it out, and they would have flushed it directly into another party that was supposed to be there with guns that would have shot and killed it. However, because of his declining fame, they decided to stay home.
What a day to not clock in.
So the beast got away.
It's always, it's that thing of you can be working a job for 2 to 3 years. You show up every day on time, clock in, clock out, put up with your boss yelling at you, put up with the customers treating you like less than human. And the one time you're like, I think I'm going to take this slow day off. It's a Thursday. No one ever comes in on Thursdays. I'm going to call out. Hey, I'm sorry. I'm not feeling good. I'm calling out. Come in on Friday. Oh, hey, you weren't here yesterday. You missed everything. Oh, this happened. Oh, and this and this. Oh, I did it. It's the one time. Hey, you missed work and you could have shot the Beast of Gevaudan, but you called out sick yesterday.
Yeah, well, apparently this was the big straw that broke the camel's back, and Duhamel was basically out of it after this. He says he put out a bunch of letters saying why it was all a failure, and one of them he said, this is one of my favorites. I would be tempted to imagine we are dealing with a witch or the devil in person if I could only believe it. The monarchy didn't buy it, so and that's when we get the next guy.
And you know what? That really sucks for him because of everything we'd mentioned earlier about him trying to redeem himself and be a hero and
This was
repair his damaged masculinity.
This was his failed redemption arc.
That really sucks.
Oh, don't worry. This sets the stage for the next one because it's even better. Do you have the name of the next hunter?
I think the people who came next were a father-son duo called the Dinval or Dinval.
Dinval, yeah.
They came from Normandy and announced that they would travel to the Gévaudan to eliminate the beast. And the dad, his name was Jean, surprise, Jean Charles. He had already killed a vast amount of wolves. Like, he had a really good track record for hunting and taking down wolves. I don't have anything additional to that. Like, I don't have a lot of details. I just kind of have the beginning and end of their story that they came over to try and eliminate it. And dad had this whole history of taking down lots of wolves, but they eventually gave up. Like, they didn't succeed. And so they left.
His failure is even worse than Duhamel.
Is it really?
Oh, it's horrible.
It's so funny that when you look at these different sources, so like depending on the website or the article that you read, and again, most of my research is online because I'm not the book person, but that's a problem that people like me can run into when they have limited resources available. But I do find it interesting how certain websites will either leave out details or word things a certain way. So like the things that I read were just like, oh yeah, the Dinval came and they did this and they tried and dad killed a bunch of wolves, but they gave up and left. Meanwhile, the book that Eli has is putting everybody on blast and giving all the tea and talking about all the embarrassing failures that they've had.
Yeah. Let me preface this next section by saying that at this point, the Beast of Gevaudan's popularity was insane. And part of it, too, adding to the Loup-garou legend, there's these two reports I have, both from February, where once it was chased by a mob of angry villagers and it jumped into a river and it was seen wading across the river on two legs. And then another one was that a small party with servants and they had a carriage. They were going through the Gévaudan, and apparently one of the guards who was on horseback, his horse tripped and the dude fell off, and the beasts pounced out of nowhere and attacked the horse, curiously enough, and not him. So when the man reached for his cutlass, the beast saw it and stood up on two legs, spun around, smacked him with his tail so hard that it busted his nose, and then he opened the carriage door, ran through the carriage, and out the other side.
What?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think that actually happened. But
it would be great especially because if it was like a movie, you'd have a whole carriage of like filled with 4 to 5 like prim and proper like French aristocrats, and then the action happens. Oh, what's happening? What's going on? And then just the door opens and a wolf man like walks through the carriage and runs out.
It's and around this time you have satires being written, poems being written about the Beast of Gevaudan, lots of pictures, all that stuff. The public discourse is getting crazy. Women are writing to the newspapers saying that women should be given the firearms because men are clearly ineffective at their jobs. And then people are also submitting their suggestions on how to hunt this creature. And I really want to read this one to you because I feel like this whole part of the story reflects modern day cryptozoology like so much.
Okay.
There was a educated citizen who was inspired by God to come up with this plan, and he was very firm that it would work if it was carried out to the T. There's a lot of steps here.
And this is Dinval or no?
No, this is before. This is I'm still talking about the popularity of everything.
Okay.
So people like Lafont are receiving letters like this, and I just think it's hilarious because this random citizen suggests that they need a team of 25 men, a dozen of whom would serve as decoys, draping themselves in an assortment of animal skins. If possible, skin of a lion, a bear, a leopard, a stag, a doe, a calf, a goat, a boar, a male, and a female wolf, and 2 sheep. The other men would have waistcoats and long pants garnished with feathers of different colors, with cardboard hats resembling helmets that are adorned with feathers and knives. And the hunters would be armed with pistols, and they would slowly patrol the woods 3 by 3 in complete silence. Their costumes would also need to be smeared with honey and sprayed with musk, and everyone would need to be equipped with a small container holding a substance consisting of the fat of a Christian man or woman, and if possible, the blood of a viper, and the shells destined for each man's pistol would need to have the teeth marks of a woman or girl because the essence of the beast's favored victims would counteract the magical powers that it had.
Like a woman blowing on the dice before someone rolls it on the table.
Yeah.
Except they gotta bite the bullet.
And then he ends the letter with saying, if you would trust me, I could lead this expedition. And that just, I read that and I was like, in like 300 years, cryptozoology has not changed. Like that's what happens. I get so many messages about, oh, this is the way you need to hunt for Bigfoot. You know, you need to have yada, yada, yada. And it's just like, yeah, it might as well be that. I might as well have a small container with the fat of a Christian man and the blood of a viper.
Blood of a viper.
You should do it. Find some volunteers. I'm sure they're out there.
I like the fact that it's like, here's the secret. They're not going to wear any old helmet. It's going to be a cardboard helmet with feathers and knives on it.
Yeah, was that just a way to save money or something? Do the cardboard helmet instead of, it's like we're making a cheap movie here, guys.
He's like trying to put together the Avengers.
Indie budget film.
I don't know. Well, anyways, back to Denval.
Yeah.
The reason I bring all that up is because the media also pumps him up to like demigod status by saying he is the next Hercules, the next Theseus. He is the grand wolf hunter of Normandy, and he's gonna come. He says it's only gonna take a few weeks to kill this thing. He is so sure of himself. And that's immediately things went wrong.
Don't believe the hype. Don't do it.
Well, apparently the monarchy would not pay for the transportation of his dogs. So already, I don't know, that's weird. But
Yeah.
so
Were they
even
trying
though
to make him a failure? Do you think they were trying to set him up for failure?
no, I don't think so.
They just didn't want to pay the tabs for his like dogs. They're like this guy brings his dogs everywhere.
It's also very possible he was lying, and you'll see why in a little bit. So even though him and his son arrived, the Denvals arrived in mid-February, the dogs did not arrive till later in March. And so while they were waiting for his dogs, what they were expected to do was to gain the trust of the locals and assist Duhamel, who is still on the scene, to hunt.
Even though
He was still there up until, they showed up, and then there was going to be some overlap, and then, he would leave. So upon first meeting Duhamel, they said that it would only take 2 weeks for them to catch it, and So that was an insult to his pride. And then as they spoke, they received a report that someone had been killed not too far away, and they told him not to go after it. They said, no, don't go after it, bro, because you'll just chase it away. And then they didn't do anything about it because we don't have our dogs. We can't do anything without our dogs. And then they immediately began a campaign against their higher ups that they could not work at all with Duhamel, that he was absolutely irreconcilable to work with. They even went so far as to say that if they killed the creature and Duhamel was there, that Duhamel would shoot the creature and then claim that he killed it. And I was like, bro,
I
why
see
do they
that.
have it out for this dude?
I believe that though. I could see that happening.
Yeah, could be. They also refused to speak in the lower class French, so immediately alienating themselves from the locals. They also,
Who are also still out trying to hunt as well, right?
correct, yes. So then Lafont gets word in on March 9th that the dogs had arrived in a nearby town on March 1st. And he knew that they hadn't gotten their dogs yet. So he went to inform them. Maybe they didn't know. And they're like, oh, yeah, we know. We know the dogs are there. We'll pick them up tomorrow. And that really sets
Perfect.
the stage.
Oh,
Yeah.
real quick. Are these guys from France as well?
Yeah, they're from Normandy.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's northern France. I don't really know.
Okay. And then you're saying they're refusing to talk in the lower class French as well? Interesting.
Yeah. Duhamel's final words to Lafont before he left was, you have entrusted your country to the safekeeping of dogs who, like their masters, have barely made themselves known. And after Duhamel left, the Denvalls continued to do nothing for several weeks.
Well, I don't understand.
Apparently, they were just hanging out.
That they might as well have been managers in this day and age.
And then when they did start hunting, they immediately started complaining that their failures were because of the peasants, who they said lacked discipline, were unorganized, and ineffective.
That
So
goes against the narrative that we are trying to tell about our people.
Yeah. Well, some aspect of that is true, but not in the sense that they're saying it, because one, if they had never been trained with firearms ever in their life and then were just handed a gun and expected to use it, yeah, they're gonna be undisciplined. As we'll look at later, what's his name? Francois Antoine, who was the most sympathetic to the locals, said that these people were so poor that they barely ate a loaf of bread a day. So, like, they were malnourished people. They couldn't focus because they were so hungry. Sometimes they would collapse while out hunting for this creature,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
It's basically the reverse of Seven Samurai of elite hunters come to help a town, but they just berate the the villagers and blame all their failings on them instead of helping them and learning how to use stuff.
Yeah, it's yeah, anyways, then they started borrowing tactics from Duhamel, who they did not like, and started poisoning bodies and imprisoning people that wouldn't report their sightings. And
Out with the old boss and with the new.
oh yeah, it didn't take long for them to, like, the monarchy was like, what the heck is going on? This is a total PR disaster. I think this was the nail in the coffin, was on May 1st in Saint Alban. The beast was shot at by three brothers named La Chamette, and two of them hit it with their guns, knocking it down, but it evaded them, and it supposedly left a blood trail. So they sent word to the Denvalls, who got it, and then they waited to go out the next day. They looked around for a little bit and then said, oh, it was raining. We couldn't do anything about it. The day after that, they heard of a new report in a village, and they didn't go. They didn't go investigate. Instead, they just sent one of their underlings to go poison the body. And then they had dinner with their boss's sisters.
Mm.
And then their boss came back in town. It was the Count Morangies. As he came home later that day, he had dinner with his sisters, and he was or so they had lunch with his sisters, and then he came home, had dinner with his sisters. He asked, what's up with them, and they're like, oh, they're not. He's not doing anything, and that was the end for them. And apparently, when he was replaced by Francois Antoine, the elder Denval broke down in tears.
Okay.
Well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions, he said as he was carried away crying.
It's just wild. I just could. It's just insane. But anyways, did you get the story of Jean Portefeuille?
Do you mean Marie-Jeanne Villay?
Holy crap! We already talked about Portefeuille.
Yeah.
You're correct. Yeah, Marie.
Marie-Jeanne Villay.
Marie.
Let's get into it.
Valley.
Alex, do you have anything about her?
No. Yeah, it's hard too because all the French names run together. So I'm like, I could have info. I'm honestly not sure.
Oh man. I love the honesty and the transparency, but we
I'm
know you
trying to
haven't
be.
we know you have information about Francois Antoine, so that'll come, I think, after this. So Marie-Jeanne Villay, she was like 19 or 20 years old, and she was attacked by the beast but survived in August of 1765 while she was crossing the river Dege with her sister. And she was armed with a bayonet affixed to a pole, and she ended up impaling the beast's chest. Of course, though, the creature got away, but she became known as either the Amazon or the Maid of Gevaudan. She has lots of heroic nicknames, and there's a statue in her honor that stands in the village Ouvouvière in southern France now. But I'm sure Eli has even more detail to go with that story. Take it away, Eli.
No, I don't.
Really?
That's basically what I got. But that is actually not the story I was thinking of. I wrote it wrong in my notes.
Oh no.
It is not Jean Portefeuille. It is Jeanne Varlet.
That's what I said.
But the story you told was of a different woman.
No. Unless
telling you, these French names.
I'm having flashbacks. I'm having
Wait.
flashbacks.
Marie Jeanne Varlet. No. Let me tell you the story I have on Jean
Okay.
Varlet, which is different from
Varlet?
this is different from Marie Jeanne Varlet.
Okay, so I
Um,
just talked about Marie-Jeanne Villay, but you have a story about a different girl?
Yes, that
Okay, go
happened
ahead.
on completely different dates. But this is what I have. So Jeanne Varlet was a mother of 6 children who was pregnant with her 7th and was outside with her children when the beast arrived. It jumped for her 10-year-old daughter, caught her by the arm. As she was holding on to her new, like 18-month-old brother, they both fell to the ground, and Jeanne attacked the beast with a stick that broke. And when the stick broke, she resorted to punching the beast in the face. And
Heck yeah.
it clawed at her, ripping tufts out of her hair. And her daughter started to kick it. And then the beast slammed Jen and her daughter and son against the wall of the house while it turned on her 6-year-old boy.
No.
And it bit the boy by the neck. But Jen was not done. She got up and shoved the beast over onto its side. And as it tried to stand up, she climbed on top of its back and started like choke holding it until it fell back down. She rolled over, tries to pick up her son, but the beast was already getting up and grabbed her son,
Jeez.
smacks her in the head again. She's bleeding. It's blurring her vision. And according to some accounts, it bit the boy again, jumped over a wall. But Jen was still not done, and she pursued the creature, holding a rock, and caught up to it. When she caught up to it, she grabbed it by the tail, or in some accounts, where she deemed the beast to be most sensitive.
Oh,
And it stopped, and it yelped and turned to face its attacker, which was Jen holding a rock, which she smashed in its face. So the beast clawed her yet again, and she was pretty much out for the count at this point. It picked up her boy, and luckily, by this point, her two eldest sons had heard this commotion and came by, and their dog chased the beast, managed to knock the beast down. It released the boy. At that point, one of her older sons stabbed the beast in its haunches, and this fighting was going on, and the beast finally gave up and ran away. Unfortunately, the boy, the 6-year-old boy, did not survive his injuries. But this was one of the stories, along with Portefeuille, the boy who defended everyone, that became one of these peasantry heroes.
Mhm.
And especially female hero, it really exemplifies what a good mother is supposed to do, right? Like defend her children.
Yeah, she's the one who should have a statue.
Yeah, it's a much cooler story than the other ladies who has almost the exact same name.
Maybe they meant to use this lady and they were looking up the records and got the names wrong.
No, because it's on a completely different date. But yeah, that was like, that's the highlight, bro. That's the coolest one.
Yeah.
That's
That-
the WrestleMania match of the Beast of Gevaudan.
Dude, that woman wouldn't quit.
No.
They talk about stories of like especially like moms who get adrenaline and then they like lift a car off of
Mhm.
a kid, or they like run into a burning building and like, you know, punch down the door or something. Of once that adrenaline gets pumping and the mama bear instincts kick in, she's gonna put a chokehold on the monster sent from God himself.
Yeah, that's where my mind went with this story. And I thought of the opening episode of the Incredible Hulk TV show, the original one with Lou Ferrigno. And I remember watching it, and they talked about how gamma radiation fluctuates through the air, and it gives people the ability to do supernatural feats. And one of them was what you described. It was a car crash scenario. The son was in the car, and the mom was lifting the car. And I was like, dang, how'd they do that?
They had it turns out in 1745, 46, the gamma radiation in France was off the limits. It was mutating the people and the wolves of the area.
Okay.
Hey, I think we
Anyways.
solved it. Full following the total and complete failure of Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Tweedledee and Tweedledinval.
Duval, hey.
Ah.
The king, he said he had enough of it and he put a ringer in. He sent his gun bearer, his aquaba bearer, the lieutenant of the hunt himself, Francois Antonin, sometimes wrongly identified with his son, Anton de Beethoven.
Yeah, I never found out his son's name.
Oh, I thought it was Robert. No,
Hi, my-
seriously, Robert Francois Antoine.
Oh, well,
Because, well, he had to be there with his son, I think. Francois was 71.
Whoa, baby.
send for the master. But it says that he arrived in Le Mazolet on June 22nd, and I think is that in the general area?
Yeah, Malzo, I think.
Okay, cool.
There'd been some reports from there. Yeah.
According to my reports, he gets there in June, and then towards the end of September, either the 20th or the 24th, he supposedly killed a large gray wolf in the area that was like 5 feet 7 inches long, 31 inches high, and it weighed 130 pounds. So it's kind of a chonky boy. But the wolf, which was named La Loup, there it is. La Loup de Chazy?
Shaz?
Chaz? Cheese?
Shaz.
Chaz. Oh, okay. La Loup de Chaz. After the nearby Abaya des Chaz. Oh, okay. Said to have been quite large for a wolf. Antoine officially stated, "We declare by the present report signed by our own hand, we never saw a big wolf that could be compared to this one. Hence, we believe that this could be the fearsome beast that caused so much damage to the proud and the beautiful French people." Trying to get a little patriotic with it, trying to stroke the fires. People were feeling sad at the time. It's been a whole year of death and murder.
Mm-hmm.
And the last two goons had 8 bloodhounds that pooped all over the area too. So the people were pissed. But the best part is he got the wolf stuffed
Mm-hmm.
and sent to Versailles.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't quite have all the parts necessary to recreate it. So they did the best they could, said, God help us, we're helping get this beast from God. And they did the best they could to make a little wolf taxidermy replica.
Yeah,
Wow.
they sent it off to get stuffed, as you said, and he also received a reward from the king and then accepted the villagers' gratitude as well. So it was almost as if they were free. Like it was almost as if the terror had come to an end. He had also reportedly shot a female that he believed to be its mate, and also a young male pup, which he reported was larger than the mother. And he
Oh, and
noted that the pup had the congenital defect of double dew claws, which is the vestigial digits on a canine's forepaws that correspond to human's thumbs. So, in addition to shooting what is believed to be the beast, he also took down
the
family
son of the
members.
beast.
Yeah, the son of the beast.
And it's interesting too that the baby could have had baked it had technically had 6 claws,
Mm-hmm.
They
like
did.
Duhamel was claiming.
Well, you guys didn't tell the exciting story as he recounted it.
Of course we didn't. We leave that for you, Bookman.
Oh no, no. This is just it's interesting because there was the wood where he killed it was the wood of palmier, which is apple trees. There were reports of a pack of wolves there. So they show up, they surround the wood, they're waiting for something to come out. He says this thing was so big, he mistook it for a donkey. Then he realized it was the beast, so he pulls out his musket, which apparently was able to hold 5 bullets in it. And he shot it 5 times, hitting it through the right eye and then into its body. It went through the skull and then into the body.
Hmm.
But the beast was not dead because it stood up and started to pounce for him. And if it wasn't for his homeboy, Reinchard, who came at it and shot it at close range, he would have been killed. And that is supposedly how they killed it. I think there's a lot of because his initial report doesn't say that he mistook it for a donkey. That happened a little bit later as he told the story a little bit more and more. And yeah, so that was yeah.
Yeah, but then guess what? 2 months later, the attacks recommenced.
Okay, but that's the thing. It waited like 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird.
He was playing a prank. He said, "Gotcha."
He was on his own summer vacation.
Yeah.
It is interesting that there was a gap as soon as this wolf creature was killed. I'm wondering, there were hundreds of these accounts of deaths and maulings and things like that. Do you guys know? I'm asking because I don't. Do you guys know if that was the longest gap in time? Like, what was the pattern of attacks? Because I know that we've told stories about, oh, this happened on this day, and then a couple days later, and then a couple weeks later, this. But was this the longest gap?
I think it was because it seemed pretty consistent from, what was it, September of 64 all the way up until this point where it was every month, like a good 6 or 7 people were dying.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 20 to 30 attacks, which is like one every single day,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's what strikes me as so weird about it was like it just stopped, or maybe the truth was suppressed. Is this the first conspiracy case?
Perhaps.
But yeah, that's what I got on
Yeah.
that.
It's crazy to think that you have a whole year of terror and this thing running around. And they finally kill it, they stuff it, take it back to the king's court, put it on display. Guy gets hailed as a hero. And then, peace returns to the land. The credits begin to roll. What a journey. We've made it through, sun setting. And then, it's December 2nd. It's just like 2 days into the holiday season. Death comes back.
Oh yeah.
Right. It is kind of like an after credit scene. You think the movie's over, and then boom, something else comes.
Going. And not even that. It wasn't even like, because we did talk something about wolf deaths already, but
did.
this was the signature trademark of the creature was a decapitation of an
Mhm.
11-year-old girl happened in December.
Yeah.
It's
And for 18 months, stuff kept going.
yeah.
There were like 30 to 35 more fatalities in that period,
Oh,
and they were not given any more help from the king. The king had his fill. He was like, I'm not doing this anymore.
I think that's like the most crazy icing on the cake of, we talked about the situations of coming off the 7 Years' War. France is in just a complete shit show. Then you have a beast running around killing the peasants. You have the monarchy being like, well, we should help them, but not really. Let's play it, for our own needs. Kill the beast, got it stuffed. The day saved. 2 months later, King Louis XV, it's back. The Beast of Gevaudan, it's back. We thought we killed it, but it's alive. He's like, I don't care. You got stuff to do. I played this round the first time. Someone else deal with it.
Yeah.
It's just like, what? Like,
Yeah.
there's more than one of these things. The sequel's happening, folks.
That is a thought. That is a thought that there was more than one beast. So you could make the argument that Antoine had killed the creature or one of the creatures and that this was just another one. Or you can make the argument that the creature that Antoine killed was not actually the beast. But either way, the king was having none of it, and matters had to be taken back into the hands of the locals, and they were back to fighting for themselves.
So how long does the second set attacks go on? Do you guys have
18 months.
Okay, yeah. So
until 1767.
Yeah, so a whole nother year and a half?
Mm-hmm.
A little longer than the first round. But
now I remembered what I wanted to say. Yeah, because the crown wasn't interested in the story. The media wasn't interested in the story either, which is why there's far less drama with it and there's far less records on it. It's harder to extrapolate the information
for the second half?
For the second half, for the sequel, for the reckoning.
Yeah.
But I do think this brings us to the final event in this saga with Jean Chastel. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this where we're going, boys?
Is it not Jean Chastel?
It is spelled Jean, but it is pronounced Jean.
It's Billie Jean.
Jean Chastel, who'd actually been involved in previous hunts. This wasn't his first rodeo. Like, he'd been out and about with the hunting parties before, but he had made some mistakes as well. He led some people into a bog.
I skipped over that.
He got arrested for that, right?
He did.
Yes.
Because it was Antoine who he was leading around into the bog, right?
It was one of Antoine's most trusted friends, a guy named Pellicer. And Pellicer, who was not from the region, was on horseback and said, "Hey, can we cut through this bog?" And he said, "Yeah, you're fine." And the horse got stuck and he fell off his horse. And then they all just gathered around and laughed at him and didn't help him out. And when he finally got out, he grabbed one of the Chastel brothers by the shirt. And then Jean Chastel and his dad, I think, pointed guns at the dude. And then they were pointing guns at everybody. And it was like full-on Mexican standoff.
It feels very straight out of The Mummy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How's this going to go down, boys?
But yeah, so Jean Chastel had been a member of a hunting party organized by Marquis d'Apcher. And he shot a wolf. He shot a creature on the slopes of Mount Mouchet using, get this, silver bullets, because he was of the belief that it was a loup-garou.
Mm-hmm.
Not just any silver bullets. They were blessed by a priest.
Ooh.
And apparently they were handmade from Virgin Mary's medals, too.
What does that mean?
Like medals of the Virgin Mary, they melted them down into the bullets.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You got to use
Blessed.
silver.
Oh, yeah, dude. He went full cosmic on this thing.
That's crazy.
He went full Arnold friggin' Schwarzenegger on it.
His rifle apparently still exists in the private collection of a descendant of Francois Antoine.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah. So
What a
it's a family
twist.
affair. Family affair.
I want to see the werewolf hunting gun too.
If you guys have any additional details or information or embellishings of the story, feel free to share because I stuck to the facts in this. I'm like, he shot it. Let's go. What's next?
Well, this is what I got on it, and this is really the end of my research. So Chastel joined a hunting party in mid-June, and it was about 4 a.m. on June 19th, and Chastel still had not. He was on a pilgrimage. I didn't go deep into that, what kind of pilgrimage he was on, but he had not yet prayed for the day. So he slipped away from the entire group, put his gun up against a tree, busted out his prayer book, was praying. Then he saw two dogs running through the mist. One was the beast, and the one was one of the marquis who was leading the hunt, one of his dogs. The beast turned around, bit the dog in the face. The dog started running away. The monster thought he was free, but in that altercation between the dog and the beast, old Chastel had the time to put down his spectacles, pick up his gun, shoot the creature dead.
And he said, "Smile, you son of a bitch," and then take the
Oh,
shot.
oh, the gory details. He shot it through the trachea where it started spasming on the ground.
Shooting blood.
No
Yes,
joke. That's what it says. That's what it
PSI aorta artery hit.
says.
Well, what happened next is one or possibly multiple things. So, one side of the story that I heard is that the animal's remains were then paraded through the region for the next 2 weeks before being delivered to the royal court in Versailles. And by this time, it stank so badly that the king ordered it to be disposed of immediately, and it was buried in an unknown location, never having been recovered. That is potentially a part of the story, but I get confused by the timeline because there was also an autopsy that took place of the body. There's a whole report about this autopsy that took place. But even with that autopsy, there's claims that the report states the animal was like no longer complete because when the surgeon arrived to do the autopsy, there'd already been a great crowd of people having already poked and prodded at it with their own knives and scalpels. And so he saw, quote, with the greatest regret that their zeal was superior to their knowledge and that the most curious parts of the animal no longer existed. However, I didn't read anything close to that in what I found from the actual autopsy. So there's supposedly two documents relating to the autopsy, one of them being the Marin report, or the Marin report if you want to use your American accent. But the Marin report has this autopsy information. And I was actually able to find on the Wayback Machine the French document. It's like 4 or 5 pages. And I had to run it through Google Translate in small chunks because there's a character limit on Google Translate. And the thing about Google Translate and the Wayback Machine and everything else, and the problem that we run into quite often with us not really having access to primary sources, is there can be mistranslations and there can just be straight up misinformation. A lot of cryptozoology articles will claim that this report said that a collarbone was found in the contents of the stomach of the animal when an autopsy was performed. And sometimes they even assign gender to it, saying that, like, oh, it was a small girl's collarbone or a small boy's collarbone. However, you can't determine gender from a collarbone, so that doesn't really make sense either. What it actually was the head of a femur of a child. And word for word, the report says this: in the dissection of this animal, we draw from the stomach a bone that they said was the head of a femur of a middle child age. So we're not really sure where collarbone comes into play at all because it's not mentioned anywhere in the article. In addition to that, I thought it would just be fun to kind of share some of the information that came from this report. It did reveal human remains inside of the stomach, as we've already mentioned. And it also included measurements for all parts of the animal's body, like its paws, its legs, its head, its chest, its everything. And it does mention the heart-shaped print on its chest. So it says this. It says his collar is covered a very thick hair of reddish gray, crossed by a few black bands. He has on his chest a large heart-shaped white mark. Its paws have 4 fingers, armed with large nails that extend much more than those of ordinary wolves, etc., etc., etc. It's a very lengthy description. I'm not going to read everything. I'm not going to read every measurement because that gets kind of boring too. But it's a completely descripted, like it describes everything about the creature, which is where that white heart comes from, which is why I didn't want to spoil it back when Alex mentioned it, because the white heart is not something that was always reported, but it was reported on this beast that was shot that had the contents of the human femur inside. In addition to that, there were a lot of witnesses that came to this autopsy, and a lot of them sort of confirmed that this was the animal they had had encounters with. Like, the body of the beast had wound marks, like scars from previous encounters, and people were actually able to point it out and say, that's from when so-and-so did that, and that's when it attacked so-and-so on this day, and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a quote that says, all the great number of inhabitants have certified to us that the ravage of this animal was so terrible that since the Easter holidays, he would have devoured in different places of the borders of Gevaudan and Auvergne at least 25 people, all of the above demonstrations that have been cited. So that's kind of crazy. Some of the examples, the body did show signs of harm from previous encounters. It says, we noticed a 3-line wound below the right thigh joint, both internally and externally, and we touched 3 grains of pellets on the hock. I don't know what that sentence means at all. We were assured that this wound must have been...
Oh, sorry. The hock is the back leg of a dog.
Oh.
You know how like their legs are kind of like a Z shape?
Yeah.
It's called the hock of a dog.
Wow, look at that.
We were assured that this wound must have been that which Sir Dula Vidrine Aiquier caused him by a gunshot 2 years ago or around, plus another old wound on the left thigh near the joint, plus an old wound on the above the lid of the left eye, which appears to have been made by a sharp instrument. Finally, this animal received the mortal blow from a gunshot which pierced his neck, severed the trachea artery, and broke his shoulder left, which is what Eli had said earlier.
Yeah, and it started spazzing out.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm not going to share all of the exact measurements because it's not necessary, but it does include measurements for every part of the body, even the teeth, and gives a pretty succinct description of what it looked like. So we talked about the inconsistencies of what color is it, what kind of fur does it have, how big is it actually, whatever. This document reports all of that. The report says, this animal, which appeared to be a wolf, but extraordinary and very different in its figure and its proportions from the wolves that we've seen in this country. Several hunters and many knowledgeable people have actually made us note that this animal has resemblances to the wolf only by the tail and the behind. Its head, like we will see it by the following proportions, is monstrous. His eyes have a singular membrane that leaves off the lower part of the orbit, coming at the discretion of the animal, cover the globe of the eye. I don't know if that's just mistranslation stuff or if that's terminology that I don't understand, but it's talking about its eyes. And then it talks about the heart-shaped thing. And then it says the legs, which are very large, especially those in front, are the color of those of the roe deer. This seemed to us a remarkable observation because in the opinion of these same hunters, knowledgeable people, and of all hunters, such colors have never been seen in wolves. So this report is like, people want to say it's a wolf, but this is a pretty strange looking wolf. When all was said and done, the Marquis d'Epchet thought it appropriate to keep this animal to dispose of it themselves in the most suitable manner. So that's kind of how this document ends. The autopsy ends by saying that the Marquis d'Epchet thought it appropriate to keep this animal to dispose of it themselves in the most suitable manner. So I'm not really sure where the story comes from that the remains were apparently paraded around and sent to the king to be disposed of. I guess that could happen after leaving it with the Marquis. Like, he could have decided later, actually, let's send it to the king. And by that point, I could totally understand why it would be so stinky. So either they kept it and something happened, or it was sent to the king at some point and then it was disposed of in some other manner. But whatever happened, the killing stopped, the spree was over, there was no more Beast of Gevaudan, and the people were no longer living in fear.
The beast was killed. The day was saved. Roll credits. No jump scare at the end. The beast officially dead.
However, conspiracy, because though Chastel was a hero, he was also the victim of a witch hunt, because people started to claim that the creature had actually belonged to him and that he had deliberately trained it to attack. Some insisted he was a serial killer who'd been using the animal strategically to deflect suspicion away from himself, because many of the beast's victims, as we've talked about already, were reported to be decapitated, something that few animals could do and were not common in regular wolf attacks. So if not a wolf of some sort, some have speculated that he had an armored war dog, which explains its strange appearance and why it shrugged off musket shots. So that's one of the proposed theories. There's a couple of other possible explanations. We kind of hit all of them at one point or another throughout the length of this podcast, but just to provide a little bit more detail, a little bit more explanation behind these theories, I have some facts and some information and things like that. Eli had said before we started recording that he didn't really have much more about the explanations. Is that correct? So am I leading this charge?
Correct. You are.
All right. So
It's a hyena.
no, it's not. It could be, but it's not. So first of all, let's just kick this wolf theory out for the last time, because that's what we've been talking about all day today. It's a wolf. It's a weird wolf. It's a pack of wolves. It's a wolf with rabies. Wolf. It is considered the most credible theory, of course, but the question remains, if the locals knew what wolves looked like, say that 5 times fast.
What wolves look like? What wolves look like?
If the locals knew what wolves looked like, why were there so many questions about its appearance and behavior? Like, if it was a wolf, it kind of relates to all sort of cryptid stories we've had where there's some sort of native culture, and then the white people come in and are like, oh, it's just a this. And they're like, no, we know what that thing looks like. We are familiar with that species. This is not that. So it's like, if everyone knew what wolves looked like, then why was there any question at all about what this creature was? There was obviously something odd or strange about it. However, if we want to roll with the wolf theory, we did mention earlier that there were a lot of wolf attacks. Like, not every attack was by a regular wolf, we don't think, but wolves were attacking people in the Gevaudan. Not just the Gevaudan, but in all parts of France and throughout rural Europe.
Say that 5 times fast.
No, thank you. This information actually comes from the book that you have by J.M. Smith. So you might have read this. I'm not sure exactly which chapters or how much of the book you read for your research on this episode, but I think you did mention earlier that J.M. Smith believed that Gevaudan had a serious wolf infestation. Large lone wolves were attacking individual communities across the region, or he thinks it might have been a wolf pack. Wolves are native to the region and had attacked humans before. Some statistics show that the wolves attacked humans 9,000 times in France between the 17th and 19th centuries. But in most cases, these types of attacks were by rabid wolves. So there are some potential flaws to the wolf theory, including the frequency of the beast's deadly attacks, suggesting it was not just a single rabid wolf. And also, it couldn't have been a rabid wolf at all because none of the victims ever ended up with rabies. So their attacker didn't carry rabies. But about 95% of the carnivore attacks on humans in the Gevaudan during the years 1964 to, or not 1964, it's jumping ahead, 1764 to 1767 can be attributed to the beast. And from 1764 to 1767, more than 100 wolves were killed in the Gevaudan, half a dozen of them at one point or another believing to be the beast. So there were a lot of false positives in that time. A lot of, we killed the beast. Actually, no, we didn't.
No, yeah.
Second theory that is semi-realistic is the hyena theory, which Eli hinted at earlier.
I'm a believer.
Okay. Many modern sources report, well, first of all, I don't even know if I want to say this part because it just seems unnecessarily confusing for me, but I'm going to do it anyways. Maybe you can offer some insight. because there's a lot of modern sources in cryptozoology that report in 1997 there was a taxidermist at the National Museum of Natural History in Paris who found a record indicating that the museum had had a stuffed hyena in its collection from 1766 to 1819. And it had also been reported that the son of Jean Chastel had a hyena in his private menagerie. Side note, a menagerie is a collection of captive animals, frequently exotic, kept for display. So one could speculate that Chastel's hyena escaped, was responsible for some or all of the beast's attacks, was shot by Antoine, sent to Versailles, and then ended up stuffed in the Paris Museum. But that's probably not the case.
Wait, it couldn't have been shot by Antoine because isn't it pretty definitive what Antoine shot was a wolf?
Yes. So
okay.
that's why I'm like, I don't even know why this article is mentioning this because nobody's thinking that.
Yeah.
But because according to the museum, the stuffed hyena was a stuffed hyena. It wasn't some unidentified creature. It was like, oh, it's a stuffed hyena. And the largest of these are smaller than an adult wolf. So a hyena is smaller than a wolf. And their features, especially the stripes, are very distinctive and would not have escaped mention in the written reports that described Antoine's kill as a large wolf and would have not escaped depiction in the famous illustration of Antoine's stuffed kill in the court of Louis XV, where it appears as a very conventional large black wolf. So it seems improbable that the king's lieutenant of the hunt shot a hyena, then a wolf, believing them to be mates, and yet was unable to distinguish between the two species. So, like I said, I don't know why there's even a distinction about that argument because nobody's thinking that. But it's realistic to assume that the beast may have been a hyena that escaped a private collection and was killing people.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Huh. That is really interesting. And maybe even would explain the pause, the 2-month pause.
Maybe.
Well, I don't know. Now that gets into like the conspiracy. Like you said, maybe Chastel was out, with his trained hyena.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The other potential realistic theory is that it was a lion, but sort of in the same sense of it being an escaped animal from an exotic collection. So it could either be a hyena or it could be a lion, but specifically an immature male lion. Lions have been known to prey upon humans as food sources, such as the famous case of the lions of Savo, or Savo, I think it's Savo.
Savo, yeah.
In which a lion pair killed over 130 victims in under a year.
Whoa.
And this is real. This happened. So another supporting fact is that the territory of the beast, which was roughly 56 by 50 miles, does align with a lion's typical range. And then probably the most important thing to note is that eyewitnesses in France at the time were likely not familiar with living lions, and what they did know about them came from very stylized imagery. So a subadult male does not have a fully developed mane and sometimes has like a mohawk type stripe running down its back, which does match the description of the beast by some eyewitnesses. And at the time, you read this quote earlier, way earlier in the podcast, about how Jean-Baptiste Duhamel wrote, "You will undoubtedly think like I do that this is a monster, the father of which is a lion. What its mother was remains to be seen." So it had similarities to a lion and very well could have been a lion, but people of the area weren't familiar with them. So like the lion and the hyena identifications are plausible. By the mid-1700s, menageries had animals of all descriptions from all over the world. Ships were coming and going, bringing curious creatures everywhere. So it wasn't uncommon for a wealthy collector to have their own exotic animals on display, which could have escaped or been turned loose. And even though the animals were known to everyone, very few people had actually seen one. Which, you know what? I get that. I knew what an otter was. I didn't have a dang clue that otters were so freaking big. I went to the, what's it called? Aquarium? Couldn't believe it. If I had seen an otter in public or out in the wild, I'd be like, that's not an otter. It looks like an otter, but that thing's way too big to be an otter. No. So these peasants who had not traveled and only knew where they lived could have seen these creatures and not realized that they were lions or hyenas. The last theory that I have in detail is, I think, the most interesting one, because we talk about hybrids all the time, but this is actually kind of plausible. So,
A hyena wolf mix.
no,
Oh.
dog wolf hybrid.
Oh.
So, Shastel's wolf is not recorded to have the same double dew claws that Antoine's had. But the fact that double dew claws were in the local population at all is very noteworthy, because one popular sheep herding breed of dog used in the Gevaudan was the Beauceron, which is a breed in which the double dew claws are endemic, meaning occurring regularly. So the local gray wolves and the local Beaucerons are perfectly capable of interbreeding, and such hybrids are notoriously unpredictable in their behavior. According to the International Wolf Center, wolves in various dog breeds mature at different rates, which leads to unpredictable hormonal changes in a hybrid, which can produce behavioral changes that may include overt aggression. So a wolf Beauceron hybrid could go through a uniquely aggressive phase as it matures, and once it learns humans are a viable food source, the hunting of humans can become part of their learned behavior. There's no evidence that this is what happened, but hormonally induced aggression among hybrids is well known, and the hybridization of wolves and Beaucerons does appear likely to have taken place.
Whoa. You cracked this case wide open.
I didn't crack it open. Skeptoid cracked it open.
Skeptoid.
That's where I got
Black
this
Yoshi
information.
69.
Some less detailed theories are just, it was a new species of some sort, or some kind of prehistoric predator, which is a narrative we tell in a lot of our things. It's an extinct predator that has been hiding for years. But I didn't go into those at all.
What about the supernatural explanations?
We talked about that at the beginning, I think. Just the idea that it's sent from God, or sent from hell, or sent from some other dimension, interdimensional window faller, whatever. What do you think it is?
I think the bishop and the count of Gevaudan said it the best. It is the divine will of God sent to bring the death sentences to the people he pronounced. I mean,
Dang.
yeah, I mean, look how many lives it ruined. Not even the people it killed. Duhamel, the Denvals.
Yeah. Hey, Shastel's got a statue though in his
Really?
honor. Yeah, it's in La Bessère Sainte Marie, and there's a small museum in Soug dedicated to the beast as well. So there's a Beast of Gevaudan museum, and although Gevaudan no longer exists because it's now Luzerne, a wolf sanctuary was opened in its name. It's called Les Loups du Gevaudan. In the early 1990s, there's a woman named Brigitte Bardot who gifted it with 80 wolves in a bid to help revive the fallen reputation of the demonized species.
Wow.
So,
I mean, but they killed 9,000 people. Is that
I know.
fair to say that they're demonized?
I know.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty wild. I really wish I would have been able to do some research into that. We could have more of a discussion, and I could have been like, "You're wrong, Jasmine. It is a hyena because I want it to be."
Mm.
Hey, fun fact. One of the very first short films I ever made was My Brother and Sister, and it was inspired by Chastel
Hmm?
and the idea that he had a trained hyena.
Really?
Yeah. I had seen a History Channel documentary on it as a kid, and although I don't remember the details, we used our Shih Tzu as the Beast of Gevaudan.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I love that.
it's like
Well, that's some pop culture for you.
there you go, and a short film no
Awesome.
one will ever see. Is there a lot of pop culture on this thing or no?
Yeah, guys, check this out. We've mentioned before people have written poems about the Beast of Gevaudan. There's been literature, a few books have mentioned it. There's been a few books about it. There's been film, movies about it as well. I'll give you two cool examples that I think are interesting, because a lot of it's like, oh, here's a 1810 novel about the history of France, and they mention the beast. But in 1878, Robert Louis Stevenson was traveling through the region, and someone described the story to him. So he recounted the story in his book, Travels with a Donkey in the Cevennes, in which he claims at least one of the creatures was a wolf. This is from chapter 1 by Robert Louis Stevenson. For this was the land of the ever-memorable beast, the Napoleon Bonaparte of wolves. What a career was his! He lived 10 months at free quarters in Guadevin and Vivaras. He ate women and children, shepherdesses celebrated for their beauty. He pursued armed horsemen. He had been seen at broad noonday chasing and killing an outrider along the King's High Road, an outrider fleeing before him at the gallop. He was placarded as a political offender, and 10,000 francs were offered for his head. And yet he was shot and sent to Versailles. Behold, a common wolf, and even small for that. So he's kind of having some fun with the history of it. And then apparently, have you guys ever heard of an anime called My Hero Academia?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically Sky High, but anime form of what happens if kids have superpowers and they send them to a school to learn how to be a superhero. Well, apparently one of the kids, I'm not even going to say the name, so don't even bother with it, but he has a power that he can grow large and gain animalistic features, and his power is called the Beast, and his hero name is Gevaudan, which is taken directly from the Beast of it's been 3 hours. How do you say it again?
Gevaudan.
Gevaudan. Ah! It's a good thing I'm tapping out because my brain broke.
I did find out that there was a 2001 French action film called The Brotherhood of the Wolf,
Oh yeah.
which kind of plays on the Beast of Gevaudan. But I think I just gotta say thanks to anybody who has reached the end of the episode.
This is extreme.
This is extreme. It's welcome to Tome Extreme. It's not.
Hopefully the episodes will not be this long.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the length of this episode actually ends up being. We have been on the mic for over 3 hours now. Good luck with that, Eli, because you're the one who edits it. Appreciate you. I wish this would have gone a little bit different, but we're back. We're having fun. It's for us. It's not for anybody else. Nobody has to listen. We were goofing around on our first episode. You remember that? Trying to do 3 episodes in one night. Can you imagine spending 9 hours on the mic?
Could you imagine talking 3 hours alone on the Fresno Nightwalkers?
Well, the good thing is that we have already agreed that, and this is news to drop. So in previous seasons, we've always released 1 episode per week, and then we've taken like hiatuses during the holidays and the summer and everything else like that. But in deciding to bring the podcast back, we all kind of took a look at our lives, decided we didn't want to burn ourselves out. So we're going to be dropping 1 episode per month. So this is the debut episode. But, exciting thing. Do you want to tell them what we're doing next week?
You got it.
This upcoming weekend, this is actually really exciting. We're done talking about the Beast, in case that wasn't obvious. Now I'm segueing into something else that we were going to close the show out talking about, but now I'm just kind of wasting time. But I am excited because Small Town Monsters is hosting Monster Fest in Ohio. So I moved to California in the year 2016, and Small Town Monsters had just sort of established themselves with their home base being in Ohio in 2015. So it makes sense that I didn't really know about them before I left, because when I started learning about them and got involved with them, and we had Seth on the show and whatever else, I was like, how did I never know about this? Come to find out it's because, well, they didn't really exist yet when you were still living there. But 7 years later, here we are, and they're hosting a festival in Ohio. And that feels so dang full circle for me. And I'm going. And so's Eli. Because Eli is on a freaking panel there. Like,
I have to be there. Yeah.
Are you kidding me? This is crazy. My mind is so blown, and I'm so excited to go back to my home state be a part of this. I'm just going as an attendee. I'm going to support. I'm going to be there, meet people, buy stuff, watch things. That's why I'm going. And it's one of the most exciting things that has ever happened to me or will happen to me. As long as nothing goes wrong, I'm flying spirit. So fingers crossed.
Hey, I'm flying Frontier. So.
But it's going to be really fun. And we're hopefully going to be talking about our experience there in our next episode. So look forward to that. Hopefully we'll have fun, exciting things to say. Otherwise, we're really leaving you on a cliffhanger.
We're bringing the vlogs back.
We are. We're planning to make a vlog while we're there. So that should be fun.
If I can, I just found out. Check this. You'll find this hilarious.
Will I?
I'm subscribed to the STM newsletter. The email newsletter. It goes out once a week, and the one this week was all about Monster Fest. And I found out that people going to Monster Fest can purchase VIP packages that grants them early access to the event where they can meet and greet with the speakers, of which I am one. And I was like, oh, I have to be there early.
Meet and greet. Oh my gosh.
I was like, I was not aware of this.
Oh, I'm so excited. It's kind of late to purchase your tickets now because this episode is dropping like 2 days before the event. So if you weren't aware, then you need to be following us on social media because Eli's been posting about it and I posted about it maybe once or twice just on my story. So sorry if you wanted to go and are now realizing that it's too late, but hopefully there'll be other events that you can come see us at.
You'll be able to watch a little bit. You'll be able to get a vibe from our video vlog.
Video blog.
Hey everyone, want to thanks to everyone for being mad supporters out there, spreading the good word. And thanks for making it to the end of the episode. If you did, there's probably like 12 people, maybe less here. And but I want to thanks to you guys. You guys are what keep us going.
Yeah, and honestly, when we were talking about coming back, I was like, the reason I didn't want to advertise it or like get people pumped up for it. Thank God we didn't, because can you believe if this was what we were building everything up to?
Hey, this episode's going to be a lot better than you think it is.
I believe you. I trust your skills. But I had been saying all that matters is that there's a small handful of people out there who are going to be genuinely excited to see that we've uploaded something new. We've had people asking if we're uploading new stuff because Eli's getting the backlog put on YouTube. Like he's posting all of our old episodes on YouTube like a day at a time or something like that. And so people are seeing them pop up and thinking that they're new episodes, but they're not. But this is a new episode that you're listening to right now.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thank you for being here.
I just want to say thank you for listening to the triumphant return of Cryptid Campfire. It's good to be back. So thanks for having me, folks. It's been fun, at least for me. I apologize for everything else. Have a great night. Be good to yourselves. Find me at alex.kaiju on Instagram. I post comics. I make drawings of monsters. I am a monster. Check it out.
You can find me on social media at Jasmine Maywith. That's JasmineMaewith. We no longer have a Patreon, so don't worry about that. But we do have an Instagram, Cryptid Campfire. You can follow us there. We have a website, cryptidcampfire.com. That's going to get updated soon too, hopefully. Eli, where can they find you?
You can find me at the Eli Watson on Instagram, primarily Facebook. My Facebook page posts some stuff, That's where you can find me, dogs. Oh, look for me on the YouTubes. Mysteries and Monsters, small town monsters. So many monsters. I think actually in 2 weeks after the release of this episode, my next episode of Mysteries and Monsters comes out, which is also going to be probably very long as well.
Gotta get the info out there, man. Get creative.
These cases are just too much. There's too much information in the world. All right. That's my breakdown for today, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. See you next month.
Bye.